The Nightly Business Report.
Japanese auto parts firm Koito Manufacturing today rejected a request by U.S. investor Boone Pickens for seats on the company's board. Pickens had asked the board to consider 3 executives of his private investment firm, Boone Company of Texas, as directors. Koito denied the request, saying it doubts Pickens is the real owner of a large stake in the company. Earlier this month, Pickens purchased a 20.2% stake in the firm.
Tonight, Boone Pickens takes on Japan, and the United States contemplates extending capitalism to the communists of Eastern Europe. That and much more next on FNN Focus. Boone Pickens may or may not be the king of takeover artists, but he certainly is among the best known. Speculation has it that Mr. Pickens is eyeing the Japanese manufacturing company Koito as a possible takeover target. Tonight, your chance to talk to Boone Pickens. Good evening, I'm Bob Berkowitz, and this is FNN Focus. Also tonight, should the U.S. be doing more business with the Eastern Bloc? But first, Mr. Pickens, welcome to FNN Focus. Evidently, sir, you haven't been reading the papers lately. It's the Japanese who are supposed to be investing in our companies, not the other way around.
Yeah, listen, let me tell you, Bob, it's tough to invest in Japan.
Yeah.
They've made it, the barriers there are not legal barriers, but it's a culture that we have, that I have had very little experience with.
It has been described as something of a closed society. How have you perceived that?
Yeah, I think that's the best description of it. It is a closed society. And it's interesting because, you know, I've been one of those that has been very outspoken about a global economy, and if you can't play in the league, you'll have to get out of the league, and this, you know, that competition is the name of the game and all. But I have assumed that we had a two-way street, and we don't have with the Japanese. If you just look at the trade deficit with the Japanese, $55 billion, and the Japanese have the second largest economy in the world, but they're sitting on the sidelines as far as allowing entry into their country as far as trade's concerned, and also into the financial markets. And I think they're being very short-sighted in what they're doing. But you can see here that this has been an unusual event, because this is the first time anything like this has ever happened before. But we've taken a 20% interest in Koito Manufacturing Company, which is they do the lighting for the Toyota cars and some of the lighting for the Nissan cars. And it's a substantial company that's been around a long time in Japan, and we took this position, and it's unusual. It's the first time anybody's ever done this before.
Why are you doing it? Are you trying to make a point? Do you think there's money to be made?
Oh, Bob, I wouldn't kid you for a minute that we've made the investment because we expect to make money out of it, and but it's also we were looking for a spot to get into Japan, and this was a unique opportunity, and we took advantage of it. But you know, we were very clear from the outset. We announced that, one, this is not a hostile move by any stretch, that we expect to be long-term stockholders, that we're not trying to greenmail anybody. That we want to work with the management in expanding their markets, both in the United States and in Europe, and that we think we have some ideas to accomplish some of those things.
The perception here is that they don't have a very high opinion of us as business people.
I think that there may be something to that. I think that what we see in America, and you know, although I have been complimentary of the Japanese, I've also said that the American worker is the best worker in the world. And I've been critical of America's management in corporate America, and I've said that we could do a better job as managers than we've been. But our workers are the best, and I think they've been poorly led at times. And I think we're seeing more and more of that all the time. But you're going up against a culture there that is closed, as you pointed out. But second, these people are very disciplined. And you don't have the same egos to deal with in Japan because of this discipline as you do maybe in the United States, but egos go with entrepreneurship too. And I think you have fewer entrepreneurs in Japan by far than you do in the United States.
You have...
But the interesting part of it is, I mean, what is it they want more than anything else? They want to be in the U.S. economy is where they want to be. That tells you something.
Okay, you are well known for being an advocate of stockholders' rights. That is an alien notion. Correct me if I'm wrong, in Japan, is it not?
That's correct. I mean, they are more. See, I believe that if management recognizes that stockholders own companies and do a good job for the stockholders, then the employees of the company do very well, and they're well compensated and rewarded for their efforts and all. And it's and the towns and cities where those companies are located are secure and very pleased with the association with the companies. So it's I can't any stretch can I see where anybody other than the stockholders own a company. Now, you know, I've got 176,000 stockholders, and so I consider myself to be an employee of the Mesa stockholders. This Japanese deal does not have anything to do with Mesa. It's an entirely different situation, and it's in a private company called Boone Company. So it's so there's no, I don't want any confusion there on this particular transaction, because this is one in which it does not fit Mesa's philosophy at all. But nonetheless, at Mesa, I've got 176,000 stockholders that I work for, and I know very well who owns the company. It's those stockholders.
Well, you said something interesting before. You said that Koito Manufacturing is a major supplier to Toyota, yet isn't Toyota also a major holder in Koito? I wonder if there's something what we call in this country a sweetheart deal between Koito, the manufacturer, and Toyota, the owner.
Well, I'll answer that question, but let me kind of lead into it this way, that in Japan, you know, we see every day on your network and others that the Nikkei Dow is up 40 or 50 or 400 or 300, and it now trades above 33,000, I think. And people here can't understand why their averages continue to go up like they do. Well, one thing is that most of the stock of the companies listed on their stock exchange, the ownership is what they call in the hands of stable stockholders. Well, that means like Toyota owns 19% of Koito, and Nissan owns 5.8% of Koito. So what you have is that most of the companies in Japan that they have, if you call them sweetheart deals, but it's cross ownership is what it is, and the stock never moves out of those particular positions. So it leaves a small float that the public stockholder is allowed to buy and sell and trade every day. So consequently, you have a greater demand than you have supply in the Japanese market. So consequently, under those circumstances, well, you have companies sell at huge multiples, and the averages continue to go up. As long as you have more money than you have supply of stock to buy, it does cause that to happen.
Right,
at the same time all that's going on, it also is a deterrent to anybody coming in and taking a large position in a Japanese company.
All right, so we need to take a break. We're going to be back with you, and we're also going to take your calls at 1-800-283-FINN. Stay with us here on FNN Focus. We're back with Boone Pickens, and we're taking your calls at 1-800-283-FINN. Let's talk to Bob from Florida. Hi, Bob.
Yes, Mr. Pickens, I was wondering how United Shareholders is progressing here in the United States, if it's still viable.
Well, Bob, we started, as you know, United Shareholders Association in August of 1986, and it is the first time I've ever been involved with a nonprofit association like that, and it is nonprofit, and actually I have now funded it to the tune of about $2 million. But we have 58,000 members now in United Shareholders Association, and it's doing extremely well. It does have a presence here in Washington and has been very influential in protecting shareholders' rights in numerous bills that have come up actually disenfranchising shareholders. So we're very pleased with it. We're very happy about the 58,000 members we have. We've got 27 chapters around over the United States, and we have members from all 50 states. So it is a grassroots organization, and we're very hopeful that that we're going to be able to double that membership, but maybe in the next year or two.
Sunday, thanks for calling FNN Focus. You're next.
Yes, I was wondering what the response so far from the other Japanese manufacturers has been.
Well, I was in Japan last week, and it was I spoke to the American Chamber of Commerce. We had a excellent turnout and reception there. Then we had a press conference. They had 137 Japanese people there from the media, and told me that it was the largest press conference they'd ever had of that type.
I understand on the news they were calling you Mr. Boone.
Well, they were. That's right. But I haven't heard from any other manufacturing companies there. But I can assure you that there's tremendous interest in this. And I'm here in Washington today and have been for 2 days, and I've met with members of Congress and Senate on the subject. Those congressmen and senators that are involved very closely with the trade issues.
What's the mood in Washington, sir, on the trade issue? Is it for barriers or for more free trade, or to try to bone the Japanese into being a little bit more fair with us?
Oh, the Japanese are going to have to make adjustments. I can tell you that. Or I mean, just the mood of the whole thing is that they're getting tired of it in Washington. And
if they don't make adjustments, what do you think is going to happen?
I don't know. I don't know for sure. There was one congressman today they had Secretary Mossbacher, Secretary of Commerce Bob Mossbacher on, and the exchange was very good, and it was obvious that the Secretary was on top of the issue and was making the necessary adjustments and all. But the congressman said, you know, we're either going to get a two-way street out of the Japanese, or he said, I'm going to propose some legislation that's going to absolutely require that. And I think that's where you're headed. I mean, you've seen the polls. I mean, the polls are clearly, you know, one poll I saw that said that the Japanese were more of a threat to the United States than the Soviet Union was. Well, I mean, there's no doubt that we're in a, you know, we're in a trade war, so to speak, and at the present time, the Japanese are very aggressive people. They've moved into our markets, and they won't allow us back into Japan to really. They'll say they do, and there's a lot of lip service to it. But the thing about it is there's the $55 billion trade deficit between the United States and Japan today, and that's got to be narrowed. I think everybody realizes that, and we've got to have better access into the Japanese financial markets. Plus, we've got to be able to sell our goods and services into Japan just as easily as they access our markets here.
Ken from Tennessee, you're next on FNN Focus. Hi, Ken.
Okay, I'm Ken.
Go ahead, Ken. You're next.
Okay.
What's the question, Ken?
Okay, I would like to know why we can't get any seats. Mr. T. Boone can't get any seats on the board of directors.
Well,
you're having trouble getting some seats on the board of Koito?
Sure. Let me explain that. We after we had become 20% owners, which was the largest ownership in Koito. Toyota has 19%. We have 20. We asked for a meeting with the Koito CEO, Mr. Matsuura, and we met with him last Thursday. And at that time, we asked to have the same representation on the Koito board as Toyota has, which is 3 seats. And they asked me if I understood the customs in Japan. And I said, well, maybe I don't, but I understand about ownership. And I said, with a 20% ownership, we should be given the same opportunity that Toyota does to be represented on a board with 3 seats.
What customs were they referring to?
Well, they followed that up with, it takes a long time to build a trust so that we can put you on the board. And this was very disappointing to me.
You don't think it had anything to do with the fact that you're an American?
I think it has everything to do with the fact that I'm American.
I'm sure it does.
And it's, but we had clearly told them that we have only a constructive, friendly attitude about association with them. I mean, that we're not trying to take your company over.
Yeah.
We're not trying to change the management. But we do believe that we should have representation on the board.
Okay, Pam from Boston, you're next on FNN Focus. Hi, Pam.
Hi. I'd like to know, do you think other investors will follow suit?
Well, it's difficult, and this is an unusual situation because it's very, very seldom that a 20% block of stock would come up on a Japanese company. And this had been assembled by a person over a period of time, and the block was offered to us, and we bought the block. So it's not a usual situation, not common, but you can see very clearly that the Japanese have closed their financial markets to outside investors. And so this was an opportunity we felt we wanted to take advantage of. There's some points that we wanted to make here in what we believed were going on in Japan, and I believe we're going to be able to make those points. At the same time, in meeting with people here in Washington today, and I met with Secretary Mosbacher and the U.S. Trade Representative Carla Hills, and also with about 10 members of Congress and Senate, and I'll have other meetings tomorrow. We're telling them very clearly, we don't want you to do anything for us. We're not up here saying, you know, that get me on the board of Koito. We're big boys. We've been in games before like this. We understand managements, and we'll take care of ourselves. But I did want to convey to them how the financial markets in Japan are closed to outsiders, because it's no longer stories that people tell. These are experiences that we've had, and this is very important for this country that we have reciprocal trade agreements where we can have access to Japanese markets. And I know that people in America are getting tired of seeing, you know, 40% of the real estate in Los Angeles owned by the Japanese, and hotel chain after hotel chain owned by the Japanese. And then we saw Riviera Country Club in Los Angeles bought by the Japanese 2 weeks ago. And you can just go down the list one right after another. And I know that that's becoming a great concern. Today I had a fellow call me and he said, my gosh, he said they're buying up ranches now, and they bought farmland in the Corn Belt.
Just for the sake of accuracy, they're in third place in terms of foreign ownership in this country, behind Britain and the Netherlands.
That's right, but they haven't been at it as long either.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a break here. More with Boone Pickens. Stay with us here on FNN Focus. We'll be back. Welcome back to FNN Focus. I'm Bob Berkowitz. Boone Pickens is with us, and we're taking your calls at 1-800-283-FINN. Angus from Florida, you're next. Hi, Angus.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. I have a question for Mr. Pickens, and he raised the issue a number of years back. I started trading the stock market with $30,000 about 15 years ago. I now have 400 issues, and I read over 2,000 balance sheets a year. And I noticed that in Japanese corporations, presidents of some of the largest corporations in the world have salaries like $750,000, no expense accounts, and drive around in Hondas. American presidents and some of our public corporations get $12 million for running 4 failing subsidiaries over a 4-year period. And I'm not going to name the names. I'm sure Mr. Pickens knows who I'm talking about.
All right. Are our CEOs living too fat?
Well, Angus, you probably heard me say also that all of us that ascend to the tops of these public corporations really do, if we want to set it up that way, we do have our private fiefdoms. And by that I mean we can select our board members who are beholden to us and not representatives of the stockholders. And there are a lot of companies that are set up that way. But let me tell you, that's changing very rapidly now. And I would agree that there's some CEOs that are way overpaid. Some of them have had an absolute disastrous record. If they'd been coaching football, they wouldn't have been where they've had 20 seasons. They wouldn't have had 3 seasons. They'd have been fired for the record. But also, there's some CEOs that are underpaid too. And I think that there's some way to quantify the results of the CEO or the management of the company and pay them on that basis. You would find much, much better results. And I know you'll probably agree with me on that. We do have a method for that at Mesa that all people are compensated. They have a base, a reasonable base, and then they're compensated if there are any bonuses. They're all on a basis that we can quantify.
Sean from Florida, you're next on FNN Focus. Hi, Sean.
Hello, yeah, Boone. I'd just like to know if there are any other American companies facing the problem that you're facing with getting representation on Japanese companies' boards.
Sean, we're the only one. I mean, this is a first-time case. I mean, that's how rare it is for a U.S. company or an individual to take a position of any size in a Japanese company that I know of. I think it's the only one on record that this has happened. So you can see how closed the Japanese society is to American investment.
Pat from New York, you're next on FNN Focus. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Mr. Pickens. I have two quick questions for you, if I may. One being, do you feel that what I would consider merger mania going on in the last few years or so would have a positive or negative effect on the economy as a whole? And two, do you feel that other major investors such as yourself would continue to take major positions in Japanese corporations in the future?
Well, now, when you speak of merger mania, are you talking about in the United States?
Yes.
Okay, in the United States, I don't think there's any doubt that there is what's happened overall, and I won't tell you that every deal's been a good deal or should have been made. But overall, yes, merger mania, if you want to identify it that way, I call it restructuring corporate America. But in 1987, we had the highest profits the Fortune 500 had in the history of the Fortune 500, and we topped those in 1988. But at the same time all that's going on, we have the lowest dividend yield that we've had in the history of the Fortune 500, which tells me that the managements of the Fortune 500 are not distributing enough of the profit to the stockholders. And if you want to push the Dow above 3,000, then instead of distributing 20% of the cash flow from the Fortune 500, distribute 30 or 40 or 50% and then watch the Dow take off. So you're looking at a situation where we are transforming and restructuring corporate America, and that's good, and it'll be good for us. The Japanese are way, way behind on this process, but the only reason that you ever had restructuring, recapitalization, mergers, acquisitions, LBOs, or what have you, the only reason you ever had those is because stocks were available in a public marketplace at a price much less than the real value of the assets. And the reason why that happened is because the managements of corporate America allowed it to happen.
Jackie from Virginia, you're on with T. Boone Pickens.
Yes, Mr. Pickens, my name is Jackie.
Hi,
and I am inquiring as to whether or not you feel that Japan is spreading an awful lot of money around Washington, D.C. for buying U.S. political influence.
Jackie, let me tell you, there is no doubt about it that the Japanese have a lot of money being used in Washington today, lobbying for their benefits.
You're not suggesting, though, that they're bribing anybody, though, are you?
Oh, no. I said lobbying.
Okay.
I didn't. If I meant bribing, I'd have said bribing.
Okay.
But they're you know, I don't hesitate to say, you know, Bob, that I'm not hazy about what I'm, you know. But
the inference in Jackie's question was it sounded a bit more than just lobbying, so I just wanted to clarify that.
All right, it's lobbying, and I have no reason to believe they're doing anything other than following the law.
Okay.
But there is a lot of money that the Japanese are using in Washington to lobby in their efforts to maintain their position in the United States. But now, think about one other thing the Japanese are doing. I mean, they're starting to build plants all around the United States. And when they do that, they naturally are going to have the representatives, congressmen and senators from those states to certainly look after their interests. And so watch very closely what's going on, because the Japanese are certainly encroaching in America.
We only have about 30 seconds left. What can the Japanese learn from us?
What can they learn from us? Again, I mean, I think, you know, America is the place that everybody, almost everybody wants to be. We have the best economy. We have the best standard of living. We have the best opportunity. I think we've got the best workers. I think we've got the best brains in the world. The Japanese learn a lot from us, and it's a lot of the things that the Japanese build today have been built off of our research and development. And that is going on all the time. That's another subject we could take an hour to talk about. But the Japanese, let me tell you, they don't pass up any opportunity to learn from America, and they don't pass up any opportunity to sell their goods in America either.
Boone Pickens, I hope you'll come back again and visit with us. Thanks so much for joining us. Next, can Western countries use economic leverage